Bishop Spears' ministry transformed lives in Fort Worth and North Texas, and I ask my colleagues to join me in honoring his extraordinary service, his enduring faith, and the powerful legacy that he leaves behind. Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 3rd, 2025, the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Green, is recognized for 60 minutes as the designee of the Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, and still I rise, and still I rise. A proud, unbought, unbossed, liberated Democrat. And still I rise, censured, but not silenced. And it's important to have this photo tonight because it will get us into some very important issues. This was the occasion when I stood before the president as he stood behind me giving a statement at a joint session of Congress. I was seated right over in the third row up. And the president started to talk about his mandate. I collected my portable items and I was about to make my way out to the aisle so that I could traverse my way out through the doors. That was my means of peacefully protesting. But as I moved and he talked about his mandate, something came over me. It was spontaneity. It was not contrived. I stood and I said to the president, "You don't have a mandate to cut Medicaid." That was what I said. Now, the press has distorted that, a good many of them, these opinion makers, opinion shapers. They want to define people and define what you say, notwithstanding your having said something contrary to what they'd like to hear. So they've said that I said he didn't have a mandate. I never said he didn't have a mandate. I said he didn't have a mandate to cut Medicaid, and I still stand by it. By the way, it became something that people across the country agreed with. So I said it, and then I left, and after I left, after having been told that I had to leave, because the Speaker concluded that I was out of order. I have no hard feelings as it relates to the Speaker. I have no animus related to his requiring me to be removed, although I am the only person who's ever been removed from a joint session of Congress. But here's what happened after I left. The president, from this podium, the president looked over toward my Democratic colleagues, and the president said to them as he was talking, words tantamount to them being lunatics. He said it. Members of the Congress of the United States of America at a joint session of Congress, and the president calls the Democrats lunatics. I wasn't here. I don't know what I would have done had I been here and he called me a lunatic, because I never insulted him by saying something negative about his personhood. I didn't do that. But I was censured. The president was not censured for calling members lunatics at a joint session of Congress. He's not been reprimanded in any way. We have allowed him to normalize his behavior. I was censured. I had to stand in the well. I accepted my punishment. I accepted it. I never criticized the notion that it was improper for me to be removed. I did say that I didn't think that the punishment was appropriate in terms of being censured, but I never said anything that would cause the president to believe that I was disrespecting him as a human being. But he called Democrats lunatics. No penalties, nothing done. We cannot allow the president to normalize demeaning people, calling them names, low IQ. We can't allow him to do this. If we do, at some point, what I have in my hand now will occur. I have in my hand an article from Politico dated 11/20/2025. When we allow the president to say these things with impunity, this is what we face. 2025, 10:42 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. It is styled, Trump calls for Democratic lawmakers to face trial for seditious behavior. Well, I don't agree with that, but that's not the point. There's more to be said. It goes on to say, seditious behavior in bold print. This is in quotations. Seditious behavior, punishable by death, he wrote on Truth Social. The president is saying now that someone, Democrats, have engaged in seditious behavior punishable by death. Then he goes on, and the article reads, Donald Trump on Thursday called for 6 Democratic lawmakers to face arrest and trial after they made a video encouraging U.S. service members and members of the intelligence community to refrain from following orders if they broke the law. Well, what does that mean if they broke the law? Well, it means this. If the president gives you an unlawful order, you are not to follow that order. That's what it means. And by the way, that's what the law says. You don't follow unlawful orders. We don't want people following unlawful orders. I'm not going to name the people. But then it goes on to say, it's called seditious, this is the president now, it's called seditious behavior at the highest level. Trump charged in a post on Truth Social. Each of these traitors, now they have become traitors. Each of these traitors to our country should be arrested and put on trial. I don't agree with that, but that's not the most egregious thing in this document that I hold in my hand. I'll get to that as I read on. Their words cannot be allowed to stand, he says. And then he goes on to say, we won't have a country anymore. 3 exclamation points. An example must be set, he says. Now we're getting close to the reason I'm standing here tonight. If he had only said the other things, I probably would have done as many others are doing and just let it go. But sometimes you can cross a line of no return. The president crossed that line with these words. The president then posted 16 Truth Social posts, including one that advocated for hanging Democrats. Now that's the line. Mr. President, what is wrong with you? Don't you know that there are people who will read this and consider doing something dastardly? Don't you know that you are putting people in harm's way? And by the way, I don't think it just includes the 8 people that are named here. I don't think it just includes them. I think if you're a Democrat, any Democrat should be concerned about what this president has done. I just don't think that this applies to the 6 Democratic lawmakers that's mentioned here, 6, not 8. I think it applies to all of us. Just so that you will know, my friends, when you walk into my office now, the first thing you see is a person with a gun. When I first got elected to Congress, we didn't have police officers sitting out in the lobby. You walk in now, the first thing you see is a person with a gun. Why? Because of this kind of ignorant behavior on behalf of the president. And by the way, I'm being kind by saying ignorant. There are many other ways, many other adjectives. There's something wrong with the president. There's something wrong with the President of the United States of America. For the President of the United States of America to say that people should be, let me read it to you one more time. The President then responded, 16 Truth Social posts, including one that advocated for hanging Democrats. There's something wrong with the president. There's something wrong. We can't ignore this. We cannot allow him to say this with impunity. We can't. Now, I don't speak for anybody other than myself and everybody who agrees with me. And a lot of people agree with me that the president can't be allowed to do this. That's why I say censured but not silenced. I have not been silenced. I will not be silenced. I am not going to be one that is going to allow this to take place and not speak up and speak out and say to the world that this has to change. We are normalizing not just hate, but we are normalizing these signals to persons who may not be as stable as I would like for them to be, who will then proceed to do something to harm someone. Yes, when you come to my office, the first thing you see is a person with a gun. When I go out to events now, I have to have someone to escort me out to events. When I'm in the airport, we have to be escorted through the airports. Do you think this improves the situation? This does not. This only exacerbates a situation that we already are having to deal with. We've had to allocate more funds so that members can have armed protection. For me, it's armed. Maybe for some others, it's not, but protection. This is not normal. And if we just allow it to continue, we may find ourselves at a point where we can't stand here in the well and say what I'm saying. We may find ourselves at a point in our history of the United States of America, a functioning democracy, when the president took office for this term, a functioning democracy, we may find ourselves with an inability to exercise the constitutional right of free speech. You have to see what's coming. You've seen what he has done, calling all of the generals in, all of these high-ranking officers. And in a sense, they spoke down to them, changed the name of the Defense Department into the Department of War. He has become a might makes right president. Might makes right. In a might makes right world, the weak are wrong. If you don't have the might to match what the president is doing, then you are weak. This is a president. I'm coming back to this, but I have to step aside for a second and say this to you. This is a president who has decided that he will use the awesome power of the Justice Department to punish people that are perceived to be, in his mind, persons who have harmed him in some way by simply prosecuting him. Now look, if we can all decide that we're going to indict the prosecutors in our cases, then we're not going to have a rule of law in this country. What happens to the rule of law if everyday people like you and me, I can't force the Justice Department to do anything, but he knows this. He knows that he and the Justice Department have unlimited time, a coffer in the millions, if not billions, and that you may beat the rap, but you won't beat the ride, you won't beat the indictment, you'll have to pay. This is all so obvious in terms of what he's doing. But back to this. Censured but not silenced. Well, there's a remedy. If my colleagues who generally sit on this side, if they won't rein him in, if the Supreme Court has decided that it won't, for whatever reasons, then there's but one option left. There's but one. The Congress of the United States of America has the authority to rein in a president who commits impeachable offenses. Impeachable offenses. Saying that members of Congress that advocated for people to follow the law, saying that these Democrats should be lynched. At some point, there's a line. This is the line. This is the solution. We're in a countdown to impeachment. I intend to bring articles of impeachment to remove this president who is normalizing violations of the Constitution. He could care less about due process. Due process. The notion that you ought to be able to at least raise your hand and say, hey, you got the wrong person when you're being taken away by people who have masked and are not properly identifying themselves as members of the constabulary. You should be able to stop that. In my opinion, people ought to be identified so that you'll know who arrested you. But he doesn't care. Doesn't matter to him that we have a branch of the government called the judiciary. He wants to impeach the judges when they differ with him. We've got a member of Congress who has filed articles of impeachment against a judge because they don't agree with the opinion. Most people in this country of more than 300 million people can't do that. They can't decide that they're going to impeach the judge because they don't like the opinion. We have entered into an era now where an authoritarian president has control of the House of Representatives, control of the Senate, and a Supreme Court that has to date not challenged him properly, in my opinion. So now he believes that he can say we should hang members of Congress. Well, Mr. President, you shouldn't. You shouldn't say that. And the remedy is to remove you from office. He shouldn't be allowed to serve out his entire term. I'm not implying that anything should be done to his physical person. No. I'm talking about what we can lawfully do, peacefully do. He should not be allowed to finish his term of office because he's not getting better. There's something wrong with him, and he's not getting better. It's progressively moving toward a point in time when he will say something that's going to impact every person in this country, it seems. I hope that it never happens. But I do believe that he is setting us up such that when he's to leave office, when his term is up, he'll have some rationale for staying on. And he will have the power, the awesome power of the presidency to back him up. What he did when he should have left office before, and he encouraged, there are other words that I can use, people to come over to the Capitol. Person was killed. People died. Walking around the Capitol, people were with gallows, looking for the vice president, calling out Speaker Pelosi's name, defecating in the Capitol, and not in the necessary facility, but in inappropriate places. He did that. When do we get enough evidence to realize that what he did once, he will do again? But he has now greater authority because of the Supreme Court saying to him that he's immune to certain things. He's been given a certain amount of immunity, which he's taken as absolute immunity. But we can see what's happening. He is progressively moving toward the date that he's to leave office, when in my opinion he will not. I think he'll try to stay on. And I think he'll use the awesome power of the presidency, and if he can, the United States military to stay. That's my prognostication. And I don't want to wait until he does it to take a stand. That's why I'm counting down to impeachment now. That's why I'm taking a stand now. I'm not saying to any other member that you must vote to impeach. But I'm saying to everybody, you have notice now. You can do all of the things that you want to do to prevent the articles of impeachment from coming to the floor for a vote. Go ahead and do that. But I want posterity to know that there was one member of Congress at least, I believe there are others, but one member of Congress at least that realized that we should have taken action, and one did. We must take this action. If nothing else, maybe if he sees that impeachment is imminent, maybe he'll change his behavior. I doubt it. But maybe he'll change it. Maybe he'll come to his senses and realize that what he's doing is harmful to democracy. To democracy. Not just to the people that he demeans, but to democracy. So I'm going to bring these articles of impeachment. Everybody is on notice now. Everybody. Not only am I going to file them, I'm going to ask for a vote. This cannot stand. There are people who will say in quiet places something similar to what I've just said. I hope that those people will have the courage. If you don't want to say it publicly, I just hope that you'll have the courage to do what you can do to prevent the imminent threat that this president has become to American democracy. I say threat. It's an assault on democracy now. It was a threat. It has now become an assault. So we're in a countdown to impeachment. And I am giving every assurance that I can. Please take me literally. I plan to bring these articles of impeachment against this president. I pray that the Senate will convict. The articles of impeachment filed in the House are comparable to an indictment, but not the same, but comparable to in a sense. The Senate then has a trial, and I would hope that the Senate would vote, Republicans and Democrats, to convict and remove this president from office. That would be my desire. But I don't always get what I want. which means I've got to be prepared to file again. I'm not going to let this die, this behavior. If you don't vote this time, it's okay. I'll file again. Because there's plenty that he's already done. Not everything should be put into just one set of articles. So there are plenty of other things. I already have articles pending against him that I call the sword of Damocles for what he has done in defying court orders, flouting court orders, not giving due respect to orders of the court. This is the President of the United States doing it. It's not just some other person. President. So they're hanging there. And I'm waiting. I'm waiting on him to get the order from a judge who's looking at it. I've been waiting since this occurred. There's a judge looking at a case that was before him. And if this judge rules as I think he will, the sword of Damocles will fall on him, meaning the articles that I've already filed dealing with his failure to obey the simple constitutional premise of persons having a right to due process. Everybody in the country knows, as he would say, everybody. We know that everybody doesn't, but that's his terminology. Everybody knows that you get due process in the United States of America, except the president. You get what a might makes right mentality accords you when you're dealing with the president. So we'll have this countdown to impeachment. I'm going to file against him before the Christmas break. Just let everybody have their fair shots at me. Do whatever you need to do. Probably shouldn't have said shots. Take whatever lawful measures you think you should take. But before the Christmas break, I plan to have articles filed and voted on right here in the Congress of the United States of America, because we cannot allow him to normalize the notion that you can just hang members of Congress because you don't agree with their position. Even if their position is wrong, he shouldn't say, according to this, in 6 Truth Social posts, one including that he advocated for hanging the Democrats. Anybody wants to read this? It's in Politico. Thank God for Politico. Trump calls for Democratic lawmakers to face trial for seditious behavior. And by the way, there are members who will agree with this. There are members who are going to say, oh, it's okay for the president to say you can hang people in this fashion. They'll say it because it's become normal for some people. I don't live in that world. I live in a world where the President of the United States is supposed to be the most respected person in the country, where the President of the United States is a person who sets the example. He's an exemplar, not just an example, an exemplar, a supreme, superb exemplar of what behavior should be like in the country. Even presidents make mistakes, but these are not mistakes. These things are done with intentionality, and they're done almost on a daily basis. There's something new almost every day. I expected something new today, but I didn't expect this. So before Christmas, we will vote again on impeachment. And I'm giving notice now so that no one will say that they're surprised when I bring additional articles. I already have some on file, and there are other things that he's done that I shall pay attention to. This has some specificity associated with it, but there are other things as well. So, Mr. Speaker, as I conclude my message tonight, I think it's important to note that we live in a participatory democracy. Every person has a duty, responsibility, and an obligation to participate in the functioning democracy. You should vote, you should serve on a jury, but you also have a duty in a participatory democracy to protect the democracy. You got to protect it. You can't just allow a president to become a might makes right authoritarian. We have to protect the democracy that we've inherited. We do it for ourselves. We do it for posterity. We do it because without this participatory democracy, the world itself becomes at greater risk. The United States of America is a pretty important piece of the puzzle of life that the entire planet Earth is a part of. We've got to protect this participatory democracy. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Members are reminded to refrain from engaging in personalities towards the president and to direct their remarks to the chair and not to any perceived viewing audience. The chair will remind all persons in the gallery that they are here as guests of the House and that any manifestation of approval or disapproval of proceedings is in violation of the rules of the House. Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 3rd, 2025, the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. for 60 minutes as the designee of the Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. I've missed all of you. I don't know if you missed me, but we're going to actually try something tonight, and some of what we're going to do this